You know, it's funny how a modern TV announcer can interpret a classic show as syndication. I was watching late night news on the WDIV Detroit, and the announcer said, he said, after the news will be episode of the Twilight Zone called The Prime Mover, where Buddy Ebsen plays a mutant who can do things with his mind for the good or bad of society. And I'm saying to myself, no place in the Twilight Zone description of this episode that Buddy Ebsen, Barnaby Jones, played a mutant. We don't know who he was, but he was the prime mover. Now, this was episode 57 of the American TV anthology series The Twilight Zone. It originally aired on March 24th, 1961 on its home CBS. Now, probably one of the greatest opening lines of any Rod Serling narration. Portrait of a man who thinks and thereby gets things done. Mr. Jimbo Cobb might be called a prime mover, a talent which has to be seen to be believed. In just a moment, he'll show his friends and you how he keeps both feet on the ground and his head in the Twilight Zone. Now, directed by Richard Bear and written by the great Charles Beaumont, with a story idea Charles expanded on by George Clayton Johnson. Now, from start to finish, Ebsen dominates the episode. In this one, small time gambler Ace Larson discovers that his partner Jimbo Cobb has telekinetic powers after a car overturns outside the cafe, and Jimbo moves the car without touching it. Ace plans to use Jimbo's power to win big in Las Vegas, and he takes his girlfriend Kitty with them. Ace wins every bet he makes, disregarding Jimbo's headaches from the use of his powers and his growing moral concerns over what they are doing, and accumulates hundreds of thousands of dollars in winnings. Kitty becomes disgusted with Ace's behavior and leaves, so Ace hires the casino cigarette girl as a companion for the night and has the manager called Phil Nolan, a notorious gangster from Chicago. Ace and Nolan begin a private game of craps, with Ace winning roll after roll. Ignoring Jimbo's interruptions, Ace decides to bet all the money in the next roll, but unexpectedly loses. Jimbo says afterward that his powers had suddenly failed him. The loss awakens Ace to the reality of what he's become, and he and Jimbo have a good laugh over the misfortune and return home with Kitty. They were surprised as a viewer that the mafia guy didn't fucking kill him. Now, back at the cafe, Ace asks Kitty to marry him just as Jimbo drops his broom. She flips a coin and Ace calls heads. Without showing Ace the coin or telling the result of the flip, she decides to accept his proposal. As they embrace, Jimbo picks up the broom telekinetically, revealing he faked his loss of power to snap Ace out of the greed. Now, the closing narration, some people possess talent, others are possessed by it. When that happens, the talent becomes a curse. Jimbo Cobb knew right from the beginning, but before Ace Larson learned that simple truth, he had to take a short trip through the Twilight Zone. Now, Dane Clark is not the best as Ace Larson, but Jane Burgess and Christine White played her characters as needed be. Now, ironically, ladies and gentlemen, this was shown in between two videotaped episodes, Static and Long Distance Call. Now, ironically, a scene from Thunder Road, which was a very popular movie at the time, the crash scene reuses footage from that movie. Now, the Charles Beaumont style of writing can be best be described as efficient. And what was kind of weird here, ladies and gentlemen, he was starting to get sick at the time from dementia. He was starting to fade. Now, Beaumont is considered the second best writer in Twilight Zone history, and he authored numerous works of what was called at the time speculative fiction, including short stories in the horror and science fiction mode. Again, he wrote numerous Twilight Zone episodes, including The Howling Man, Static, Miniature, Printer's Devil, and Number 12 Looks Like You. He also penned the screenplays for several films, such as Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, The Intruder, and The Mask of the Red Death. Now, novelist Dean Koontz said Charles Beaumont was one of the seminal influences on writers of the fantastic and macabre. I tend to agree. So I think what Beaumont was a good fit for the Twilight Zone because he believed in using intelligence in his writing. Now, novelist Dean Koontz at one time called Charles Beaumont as one of the seminal influences on writers on fantastic and macabre. He was also subject of the documentary Charles Beaumont, The Short Life of Twilight Zone's Magic Man by Jason V. Brock. Now, born in 1929 in Chicago, and unfortunately died of complications from a form of Alzheimer's that took away his mind years before and aged him quite a bit. When he was writing for the Twilight Zone, he was barely in his early 30s. Now, a leader in science fiction, these are the episodes he did, including Perchance to Dream, Elegy, Long Live Walter Jameson, A Nice Place to Visit, The Howling Man, Static, The Prime Mover, Long Distance Call, Shadow Play, The Jungle, Dead Man's Shoes, The Fugitive, Person or Persons Unknown, In His Image, Valley of the Shadow, Miniature, Printer's Devil, New Exhibit, Passage on the Lady Anne, he was doing a lot of the hour-long episodes, Living Doll, Number 12 Looks Like You, and Queen of the Nile. Now, his passing was tremendously hard on his friends and colleagues. Now, this is what was happening, In 1963, when Beaumont was 34 and overwhelmed by numerous writing commitments, he began to suffer the effects of a mysterious brain disease, which seemed to age him rapidly, sort of like Long Live Walter Jameson. His ability to speak, concentrate, and remember became erratic, while some people attributed all of this to his heavy drinking. His friend and colleague John Tomerlin disagreed. I was working closely with Chuck at the time, and we were good enough friends for me to know that alcohol by itself could not possibly account for the odd mental state that he was in. He was rarely well, said colleague William F. Nolan. He was thin and kept having headaches. He used bromo seltzer like most people use water. He had a big bromo bottle with him all the time. The disease also affected his work. He could barely sell stories, much less write. He would go unshaven to meetings with producers, which would end in disaster. He couldn't explain his script, and most producers would say, "We're sorry, Mr. Beaumont, we don't understand or like the strip." Now, the condition might have been related to spinal meningitis he suffered as a child, which I also suffered as well. His friend and early agent, Forrest Ackerman, has asserted an alternative, that Beaumont suffered simultaneously from Alzheimer's and Pick's disease. The claim was supported by UCLA medical staff, who subjected Beaumont to a battery of tests in the summer of 1964 that indicated it might be either Alzheimer's or Pick's. And the hospital said, there are absolutely no treatment for this disease. It's permanent and it's terminal. He probably lives 6 months to 3 years. He'll decline and get to where he can't stand up. He won't feel any pain. In fact, you won't even know what's happening. Now, several fellow writers, including Nolan and friend Jerry Saul, began ghostwriting for Beaumont during 1963-1964 so that he could meet his many writing obligations. Privately, he insisted on splitting these fees. By 1965, however, Beaumont was too ill to even create or sell story ideas. His last on-scene credit was the 1965 film Mr. Moses, officially a screenplay written by him, but more likely written by Manja Danishevsky. Now, on January 21st, 1967, he died in Woodland Hills, California, at the age of 38. His son Christopher later said that his father looked 95 and was in fact 95 by every calendar except a 1 on your watch. So again, the prime mover, Charles Beaumont, the great legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I miss him an awful lot because him and Rod Serling passing away well before their time was a tremendous loss for the entertainment industry. So the prime mover, going to be shown on City TV this month in Canada. Keep an eye out. If not, check out the DVDs. Check out the Blu-ray version where you got the commentary for the episode. But Buddy Ebsen, kind of like James Stewart in an Alfred Hitchcock movie. It doesn't make any sense until you see it. And Ebsen's performance in this is quite good. Thanks for listening and have a great day.